Okay, so now we're going to be moving to a chart that shows the distinction between ICD-10 and ICD-9. Again, ICD-9 was 3 to 4 alphanumeric numbers in length. ICD-10 was 3 to 7, or is 3 to 7 alphanumeric characters in length. The original ICD-9 had about 14,000 codes, and as of 2013, we have about 69,000 codes within the ICD-10 database. As of 2016, though, that number has grown considerably. But for testing purposes, I want you guys to be familiar with the 69,000 codes. Just know that there's a clear difference. I mean, obviously, you can see the sheer number. It's almost 6 times as large for the new version. Uh, the first digit within ICD-9 could have had the ability to be alpha, so E or V, or numeric. Uh, and for ICD-10, the first digit is alpha. Digits 2 and 3 are numeric, and 4 and 7 are alpha or numeric, reading from left to right. For ICD-9, we had very limited space for codes. Okay, so I want you guys to remember that for the older version, the ICD-9 version, once those codes were set in place, you really couldn't create new codes. But as a direct comparison for ICD-10, ICD-10 allowed for the creation of new codes, for the creation of new diseases. Okay. Um, Within ICD-10, again, it's less detail, and you can simply remember this because ICD-9 has lower, smaller number of numbers that you can choose from, so that would also equate to less detail. And for ICD-10, because you have much more combinations that you can make, you can offer more specificity, so more detail. Now, the last item here is very interesting because this is why there is such a high number. One of the main reasons why there's such a high number difference of codes between 10 and 9. ICD-9 lacked laterality. What does that mean? So let's say you have a cut on your left hand. The way you code for a left-handed cut in ICD-9 is you just say hand has cut on it. There's a specific code for it, code 123 dot, I don't know, dot 60. So 12360 is for a hand that has been cut. For ICD-10, you have more, it includes laterality, meaning that you don't just pick the code that says hand is cut. You pick the code that says left hand is cut. So now that you're separating the body into left and right, it offers more specific detail. It also justifies the reason why there's so many codes here. Because if you think about it this way, out of these 69,000 codes, a big chunk of them are the separation between the left side of your body and the right side of your body when it comes to a disease or something that you have, right? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. And actually, before we move on, I want you guys to be very familiar with this chart since I test heavily on it. Okay, so the other type of coding standard that we're going to be going over today is called the Current Procedural Terminology Coding System. The CPT is a procedural coding system published and maintained by the American Medical Association. It was originally used strictly for reimbursement of services, procedures, and operations, but now also contains quality measure tracking codes as well. A CPT code cannot be submitted for reimbursement without the associated ICD clinically modified code. Notice that there it doesn't even say 9 or 10. Just know that we're on version 10 as of October 1st, 2015. To justify the medical necessity of the procedure or level of service performed. So again, CPT codes are used together with the right ICD-10 code to say the patient had this disease, the patient had this issue, And these are the procedures that we performed for that issue. Clinicians use these CPT codes to obtain reimbursement for their work, regardless of where the work is performed. So hospitals use CPT codes to get reimbursed for the utilization of hospital resources for all outpatient hospital-based services. So CPT codes also are used again for the resources that the hospital has to use up in order to provide those services for you. So anything from, I don't know, if you go into an operation, gauze pads, the tools that they use, the toolkits that they use, um, anything, you name it, there's a procedure code out there for them to use. And CPT codes, know this for the exam, please. CPT codes are divided into two main types of codes. The evaluation and management, E&M codes, you don't have to know the range. And the healthcare common procedure coding system. This is the one that actually codes for the procedures themselves, the HCPCS. The evaluation and management codes, okay, it is up to the clinician to provide documentation to prove the level of a visit, meaning the priority level of the visit. As an example, if the clinician chooses to select CPT code 99204 for a new patient visit in the physician's office, they must document that the problems are of a moderate to high severity. The physician spends about 45 minutes face-to-face time, and the E&M requires that these key components have to be documented on the comprehensive history, the physical exam, the medical decision making of moderate complexity. Basically, if the physician says this patient is at a moderate status, they then have to collect and perform specific services that reflect that certain status. Because the minute you issue a status to a visit, there's a different monetary value that gets associated with that procedure. So if the patient comes to you and the physician establishes that the patient is severe, there's a major issue with the patient, they can't then go and treat the patient as if they had something moderate, meaning they can't just document on one or two things, ask the patient one or two questions, take their heart rate, take their blood pressure, and send them home. No, they have to do the specific required procedures, and the level of attention that they have to give to that severe patient is completely different from a patient that walks into that clinic that is uh, more so okay. Okay, E&M codes. So the only thing that I want you to keep in mind is that for these evaluation and management codes, we have specific calculators that calculate what these codes are to determine the level of service. And on the next page, I'm going to show you guys what one of these calculators looks like. And notice how there are a lot of checkboxes here that uh, the physician can use. So again, this is at an outpatient office, for example, where the physician just has to answer specific information about the visit, about the status of the patient, about what ICD code they were associated with, as you can see in the upper right hand corner. Okay. And once they complete all of this stuff and they click OK, the calculator starts calculating the E&M level, the code that you see in the upper left-hand corner. Okay, so we do create these applications, these calculators, to make it easier for physicians to know what type of code they need to then put in for reimbursement. Okay, so in conclusion, data standards play a major role in accomplishing this interoperability, this talking from one system to another. We went over a couple of major coding standards. We went over, let's take them from start to finish. We went over XML. We went over HL7. We went over CDA, Clinical Document Architecture. Okay, and all of these we did in class the last time we met, and the ones that we did go over today, a couple of the main ones that I want you guys to keep in mind again are DICOM, LOINC, RX norm, ICD. Okay, these are a couple of the major ones. Okay, CPT, that was the other one. A lot of these standards are used today, uh, within the healthcare industry, and know that if we didn't have these standards, we wouldn't have the ability to have the robust healthcare system that we currently have now. Um, that's in a nutshell what interoperability is. Um, so let's continue on with the conclusions. There is a slow movement towards industry-wide standards, such as the continuity of care document. Again, what the clinical document architecture template showed us. Meaningful use is a strong driver of these data standards. Okay, they push for it. They push for certain standards to be followed. And medical coding standards and rules drive reimbursement for all healthcare providers. So that's how, again, a healthcare provider gets paid based on these medical coding standards. Therefore, medical coding and billing professionals will continue to be in high demand as experienced coders retire and the U.S. moves towards the adoption of ICD-10 coding October 1st of 2015. Again, note that we have already moved to this level and we are on ICD-10 as of October 1st of 2015 last year. All right, so that concludes the review of Chapter 6. And again, please look for the link to Chapter 4 on the announcements page. It's going to be right underneath the link for this presentation. I want you guys to go through Chapter 4 and Chapter 6, the remaining Chapter 6. Therefore, you should be ready for the examination that we have at our following meeting. Have a great day and enjoy your weekend.